the size of Antonino Rocca's penis. Good evening. I am RJ City, and this is RJ Reads Wrestling Books. Attractive Alan, handsome Harold, gorgeous George. I am, of course, talking about Gorgeous George, the outrageous bad boy wrestler who created American pop culture. It's not written by Gorgeous George, it's just about him by John Capoia. And there's a lot of words here. This is him asking for a small amount of salt, but it says here, finally the legend of one of my childhood heroes in all its glamours and tawdry detail. It was such a good read that I felt like bleaching my hair blonde afterwards. And that's a quote by filmmaker John Waters. And then, of course, there's a lot on the back here from Muhammad Ali, Bob Dylan, James Brown, Jeremy Schaap. He wrote Cinderella Man, nobody knows. And Ishmael Reed, poet, critic, essayist, and novelist. There's a lot of words. People are endorsing this, unlike the other books I've read, because this one is actually good. So I'm kind of recommending it in an unironic way. But the passage I will read from tonight shows how respectable and professional the people in Gorgeous George's era certainly were. So we begin. Jake Brown was a drinker too, but just beer, and he didn't imbibe every day. Thankfully, he was a sober driver. When he was home, his drinking drove Beulah crazy, but then, as someone who knew them both remarked, she was already crazy. Usually, he and George took off by themselves after the matches, but at other times, they'd stay overnight eating and drinking with the boys. Even in his most successful times, George never high-hatted the other wrestlers. The gorgeous act was just for the ring and the marks. He loved their company and they his. George told jokes, did card tricks. He could throw a card at a wall and make it stick. Bought drinks and slapped backs. He was a physical man in a physical business. When George started horsing around, remembered one of his drinking buddies, and he grabbed your arm or shoulder, you could feel how powerful his muscles were under the loose clothes. Like other persuasive public men, George had a way of engaging others, of being squarely, fully with them, such that they both felt included and wanted to be included. The boys, who had considerable egos of their own and might have resented his success, still considered him one of their brethren. Yet in some ways he stood apart. No one else traveled by chauffeur-driven limousine, for one. More importantly, George had an ineffable current, the quality that allowed him to cantily, intentionally diminish his natural handsomeness and still become a star. And that overshadowed his impressive athletic ability. Excuse me. Ted Lewin, the baby face who became an illustrator, worked with George just once when he was 19 or 20 years old. I had so many matches over 15 years, he said, and I don't remember one from the other. I remember this one, though, because of Gorgeous George. You see him perform, and he's bigger than life. And then when you get in his company in the dressing room, he still had that quality about him. Other guys were great wrestlers and great workers, but they just didn't have the star power. George drank a good bit, and at times he would fight, both of which the boys heartily endorsed. Jody Hamilton, who wrestled as the Assassin, once said approvingly, George never weighed over 190 pounds, and yet I saw him deck a 300-pound truck driver in a bar in the old Claridge Hotel in St. Louis. He dropped him colder than a wedge. After they wrestled, the boys usually hit a local bar or three. Frequently, some inebriated patron would recognize one of them or just react to his size and say something along the lines of, "You think you're tough, big guy?" Almost invariably, he did, and fights followed. Marks would also confront the boys with the accusation that their game was fixed. The wrestler's first response was usually rhetorical. The guy who wins a match makes more money than the guy who loses, they'd say. So why would I ever go in the tank? Untrue, but eminently reasonable. At times, though, fans would keep insisting that the fix was in, and then another kind of argument came into play. Giller Kowalski once found himself sitting at a saloon table next to three businessmen in suits and ties, when one of them looked over and declared, "Wrestling's all fake." Kowalski got up, grabbed him, lifted him up, and slammed him down on the table head first, whereupon the executive sensibly lost consciousness. Kowalski turned to his friend and said, "Is that a fake? Now get him the hell out of here and don't come back." Their travel schedules were tight, but the boys always made time for their groupies, who they charmingly called ring rats, or simply rats. Wrestlers weren't the most attractive lot, but they were big, strong men. As Don Arnold, a beneficiary of this dynamic, points out, they were becoming TV stars, which had its own powerful pull. Then, too, some women liked the fact that tonight's date would be almost assuredly gone tomorrow. A mating routine evolved. On a cool 1950s night in San Bernardino, let's say, Arnold is making his way from the arena to his car. At 27, the blue-eyed lifeguard with a weightlifter's build is an up-and-coming babyface, and to his delight, he's starting to make real money. Arnold's taken a shower after the night's exertions, and he's feeling good about life, and would like to feel even better. As he strolls into the parking lot with his duffel bag in one hand, a ring of fans forms around him. Arnold horses around with some of the kids, putting them in headlocks or lifting them overhead in a military press, and he signs a few autographed books. There are young women in a little throng, too, some with their husbands or dates, some not. One kind is more interesting than the other. Arnold turns toward one of them, a dark-haired girl in a skirt and white blouse who has a certain air. She looks kind of sassy somehow, and the signals she's sending, he's receiving. He turns toward her, they chat, and then he asks, "How long will you be in town?" Or she might even be more direct, "Where are you staying?" If he didn't like the way she looked, he'd say, "I'm not staying, I'm leaving town tonight." But this isn't one of those times. "I'm at the so-and-so hotel," he tells her, "and I'll be there at 11. In this boys' club, locker room humor prevailed. Much discussion revolved around the size of Antonino Rocca's penis, said to be the biggest in wrestling. According to some of the boys, Rocca would leave the locker room door open at times to let potential ring rats get a look at his main eventer. Lou Thez, who possessed a more elevated wit, said of Rocca, an Argentine of Italian ancestry, that blessing him in the jockstrap was the Lord's way of compensating him for not giving him any brains. But don't take my word for it.
Guests of the RJ City Show, subscribe to his channel, follow him on social media, and buy his t-shirts at ProWrestlingTees.com/RJ City.